You feel it before you can name it. Your phone finishes your wanting. The sky outside matches your screen. Is this life or its rehearsal? If an algorithm can predict your next move, where does your will begin? Morpheus would call it a door, the oracle a question. What are you choosing when the menu chooses you? Tonight, we go looking for the seam between world and copy, and for the part of you that refuses to be managed. We inherit a story about choice that sounds like freedom, but behaves like choreography. We are taught to select, not to author. The Matrix turns that suspicion into a parable you can feel in your fingers. It doesn't start with laser light. It starts with an invitation to doubt. A stranger leans in through the noise and says, "You've always felt it, that grain of sand in the eye when the day runs too smoothly." You are not told what to think. You are offered a door. The decision is yours, they say, and yet the room you're standing in seems designed to push you one way. This is the first lesson. If the set is persuasive enough, even rebellion can be part of the script. Morpheus appears as the antidote to scripts. Not a salesman, and not a priest, a midwife. He does not promise safety. He promises contact. He thinks you're more than your habits, and for that he risks his people, his city, his reputation. Where the world insists on 1,000 painless options, he reduces it to one stark question. Do you want the truth enough to endure the weight of it? He speaks like a teacher who knows the classroom is on fire. He offers a pill. Yes, but more than that, he offers you a way to use your attention. Look again. Look without the frame. When he trains you, he doesn't say believe harder. He says notice. Notice how the construct conforms to your expectations. Notice how your body obeys a gravity that isn't there. Notice the rules you never consciously chose. He pulls you from comfortable dreaming into uncomfortable perception and tells you to leap. The leap is not into air, it is into authorship. Every time you learn to move without the presumed railings, something in you steps out of costume. The child who plays with the spoon tells you it isn't the metal that bends. It's the mind. That line isn't showy metaphysics. It's a basic skill, the courage to revise the premises you didn't know you inherited. Morpheus's faith is not blind, it is wager. He bets on the part of you that refuses to be finalized by a menu. He is the voice that insists your life is bigger than the roles available. It's tempting to treat him as a guru and outsource the hard work back to him. He denies you that. Even his belief in the one is, at bottom, a belief in someone who will choose when the scripts run out. He ferries you to the edge and will not jump for you. That restraint is love. It is also a rebuke to a culture that wants to be inspired without changing a single habit. You meet the oracle and expect thunder. You find a kitchen. You expect a verdict. You get a plate of warm cookies and a sign that reads, in a language older than code, know yourself. She does not reveal fate so much as she reveals you to yourself. She asks questions that tilt the room just enough for your own answers to arrive. She tells you exactly what you need to hear for your decisions to be yours. People call that manipulation. Maybe it is something gentler. A physician who knows that truth without timing is a blunt force. She says things that sound like riddles because the shortest distance between your ears and your hands is sometimes a story. In that kitchen, metaphysics becomes practical. When she suggests the choice isn't in the future but already underway, she's not making a mystical claim. She's exposing how our actions often lag behind our commitments. We pretend we are waiting to choose while our feet are already turning. She is not foreclosing your freedom. She is respecting it. The moral price of seeing this is steep. If you are the kind of person who rescues, you will break yourself to carry one friend up the stairs while the world burns. If you are the kind of person who keeps promises through nausea, you will keep one beyond reason. We want cosmic instruction. The oracle hands us a mirror. Between the midwife who asks you to leap and the woman who bakes you into your own honesty, there is the agent of refusal. He wears a suit like a verdict and speaks in a tone that says, entropy is inevitable. If the Matrix is an orchard that feeds on humans, Agent Smith is the blight that wants monoculture, the single taste that swallows all others. He is not merely a cop. He is nausea in a person's shape. The hatred of difference, of smell, of sweat, of anything that won't click into place. What begins as enforcement curdles into contagion. He discovers the pleasure of replication. He copies himself into anyone he touches until the world becomes a hall of mirrors, reflecting his boredom back at itself. Watch him long enough, and you begin to recognize him in other rooms, in feeds that convert language to slogans, in crowds where sarcasm is the only safe currency, in communities haunted by a voice that says, "Why bother? It's all the same." There is a term from immunology that helps here. Original antigenic sin, the tendency of the body to overlearn one kind of defense and misapply it forever. Smith is spiritual antigenic sin. He learns how to devour one rebel and decides to devour the world. In doing so, he destabilizes the very system he exists to guard. This is more than a plot twist. It is a diagnosis. Control breeds a counterforce that consumes both the prisoners and their wardens. While Smith multiplies, the architect watches. He isn't a villain in the usual sense. He's a mathematician with a city for a chalkboard and an allergy to surprise. If Morpheus wagers on your capacity for authorship, the architect wagers on the law of large numbers. He knows you. He knows the percentage of anomalies the system can tolerate. He knows that the simplest way to neutralize revolt is to plan for it, to ritualize it, to let Zion burn and be rebuilt on a schedule. He speaks in rooms with too many screens because he is the god of additions. For him, you aren't a person. You're a remainder term, the error that must be managed. The architect's genius is to convert the most intimate human experience, love, into a variable in a control loop. He offers the savior a clean set of doors. Save the world by starting it over, or save one human and let the species die. It is elegant, cruel, and nearly irresistible. Who wouldn't choose the world? The trick is to forget that the world is someone. The trick is to turn the beloved into a statistic. This is how systems seduce you. Binary dilemmas that bleach your obligations until only one looks righteous. Neo isn't a genius because he disobeys. He is a genius because he notices what the dilemma omits. He chooses the person. Not because the world doesn't matter, but because the world is a congregation of persons, not a spreadsheet of probabilistic lives. He refuses the abstract because he trusts that the concrete carries a door the abstract doesn't know about. In choosing Trinity, he does not doom humanity. He reintroduces human scale into a machine that forgot what it was built for. The architect treats love as exploitable bias. Neo treats love as the one variable that can open a path no calculation foresaw. There is courage in that. There is also humility. To accept that the path may not be your survival, that your role might be to end a pattern rather than perfect it. That's a mature freedom. Meanwhile, Smith grows like mold in a closed jar. He isn't just the police anymore. He is parody and despair, a wave that drowns distinctions, an algorithm tuned to the most predictable conclusions. He looks at the oracle and copies her too, which is another way of saying he eats the future and becomes sterile with it. You can hear him in every conversation that ends with, "It's all rigged," and starts with, "Everyone is the same." He is the voice that would rather be right about meaninglessness than risk being surprised by grace. What is Neo to a plague of certainty? Not a superhero. A refusal. He walks into a storm he cannot win by force and chooses contact over conquest. In the final accounting, he doesn't defeat Smith. He lets Smith digest him. He chooses to be a key that fits the lock of the disease. The virus thinks it has won because it has eaten the last difference. In fact, it has bitten a fuse. The system recognizes itself overtaken by its own defect and shuts down the infection. If you're allergic to messianic tales, pause here and notice the structure beneath the myth. When sameness metastasizes, the cure is not more spectacle. It is meaningful difference brought into radical contact with the disease. If the oracle is the future as possibility, the architect is the future as control. If Morpheus is faith with muscles, Smith is certainty that rots into contempt. Neo lives in the tension between them. He is the one person in the story who refuses to let any single abstraction keep him from looking at a person's face. He burns with doubt, makes mistakes, loves badly and then better, and ends up as the hinge on which both worlds turn. He is not valuable because he can fly. He is valuable because he stays answerable. We like the bullet time. The films prefer the kneeling. Outside the dome, the world is not kind. It is grey, cold, and honest. The ships groan. The pipes leak. The food is a paste you don't post about. People argue. They get jealous. They act small and then make repairs. There are no bright tiles. There are only weather and consequence. If you've ever walked out of a long loop and felt the air scratch your throat, you know why this is preferable. Without consequence, there is no contact. Without contact, no one can know you. Without being known, you will sell your days for a mood. The real is frightening, not because it bites, but because it asks you to carry weight where the menu only asks you to point. The film's secular sermon is that attention is not neutral. What you feed grows. If you feed the curated grooves until they gleam, the grooves will move you even when you swear you're choosing. If you sit with friction long enough to acquire taste again, your hunger will return to you like a country you left for a city. Morpheus's practice drills, jump, fall, stand, jump, are less about heroics than about metabolism. He teaches your nervous system to stay online when a scene doesn't flatter you. The Oracle's cookies do something similar. They reward you for staying with difficult knowledge long enough to act without spectacle. When you listen to the architect, listen for the subtle invitation to abolish interiority. He wants to totalize your choices into predictable patterns so that the system can keep cycling you with a clear conscience. When you listen to Smith, listen for the acid that dissolves meaning whenever the world refuses to obey. When you listen to Morpheus, listen for the insistence that faith without discipline is just a mood. When you listen to the Oracle, listen for the domestic holiness of timing and kindness, how she protects choice from becoming theater. And when you listen to Neo, listen for the small sound of a person deciding to be a person at full cost. It is too easy to turn this into a mystical escape. The films are tougher. They insist that becoming real means becoming responsible, not invincible. You leave the illusion, and there are still bills, bodies, elders, children, debts. You do not become a god. You become a neighbor who knows how to power down a machine without unplugging your own heart. The heroism here is menial. Learn to do dishes without a soundtrack, apologize without a prompt, read a page without checking if anyone saw you read it, practice attending without an audience. That is how you unlearn the engineer in your head who keeps telling you that your value is a graph. I used to think the red pill was bravado. Now, I think it is patience. It is saying no to the menu long enough to feel how clumsy your hands have become at cooking. It is knocking at the kitchen door and asking to be useful. It is letting flavors return to a tongue dulled by sugar. It is mortifying to discover how easily you can be managed. It is exhilarating to begin noticing where you will not be. A friend told me a story about a study where subjects were left alone in a room with nothing to do for 15 minutes, except press a button that delivered a mild electric shock. A staggering number chose the shock. Pain over unformatted time. Smith would call that proof. The Oracle would call it a starting point. Morpheus would hand you a blank minute and make you practice until your hands stopped reaching for punishment as entertainment. The architect would offer you a room with a screen and 1,000 options, each calibrated to your boredom's exact pitch. You can feel in your body which of these loves you. I want to honor fatigue here. It's normal to be tired. It is not a failure to need structure. There is mercy in a well-placed default. There are seasons where survival means choosing the path that chooses itself. But there's also a line past, which comfort begins to steal your name. The films draw that line, not at pleasure, but at surrender. They do not shame delight. They shame a life that mistakes numbing for rest. You will know the difference by the way the morning feels. The menu hangover makes you smaller. Weather makes you sore and tender, and strangely awake. If you're looking for a practical way to start, you won't find it in a cathartic montage. You'll find it in a tiny refusal repeated until it becomes character. Do not let the suggestion write your apology. Do not let the autoplay finish your night. Ask someone a question you do not know the answer to and wait without filling the silence. Walk without headphones once a week and see which thoughts try to sell you something. Leave one thing unoptimized until it teaches you what it wanted to teach you before you streamlined it out of its own meaning. None of this will trend. All of it will matter. In the end, the films offer something stranger than rebellion. They offer repair. Neo's last act is not personal victory. It is a truce that saves his enemies from their worst selves and saves his people from their favorite story about perpetual war. The Oracle bakes again. The sky changes color. The city breathes. The system doesn't become kind. It becomes honest enough to stop killing difference for a little while. Peace lasts as long as it can. That sentence is the opposite of cynicism. It is a discipline of hope that doesn't require denial. We are not living in domes, but our days can be domed. The way out is embarrassingly small. It is the next time your device puts 3 perfect tiles where your hunger should be. It is the hour when you sit in a room and discover that your interior life has a voice that doesn't sound like a slogan. It is the conversation you refuse to script. It is the door you notice, not because it glows, but because it is unlabeled. The Matrix remains a guide, not because it gives you a conspiracy to fight, but because it gives you a conscience to practice. When I ask whether we are free or managed, I am not asking for a theory. I am asking about the angle of your head when you wake. I am asking whether the first thing you feed is the part of you that can be sold, or the part that can say no. I am asking who in your life plays Morpheus to your excuses, and who plays the architect to your fears. I am asking whether you have an oracle, a person or a place where the air smells like cookies and truth arrives with the decency of good timing. I am asking whether you can recognize Smith when he borrows your voice. Morpheus would say, "No one can wake you, only point." The oracle would slide the plate closer and remind you you're already leaning. Name it. The architect will give you flawless reasons to postpone yourself. Smith will gladly think in your voice until everything sounds the same. Freedom isn't the flood of options, it's the weight you agree to carry. One refused prompt, one unformatted minute, one person chosen over a perfect abstraction. Here's the moment, the one Morpheus held out in his open palms. The blue pill, a polished simulation that flatters you and lets you sleep. Or the red pill, the unformatted real, weather, consequence, and faces that don't wait for prompts. Your hand is already drifting. Will you keep the glow or swallow the world and wake?